Chapter 181 4 Great Providences. Long Shan has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, 1 star. Having just inherited the mystical power, Hanju saw this line of words appear in front of him. He checked Long Shan's information. Long Shan, perfected Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm, son of the Heavenly Emperor, true dragon bloodline. He has the inheritance of the Heavenly Dragon Great Emperor and is a rare prodigy of an era. He has the strength to kill enemies beyond his cultivation realm. Because the Heavenly Emperor asked him to challenge you, he's interested in you. Current hatred points, 1 star. Son of the Heavenly Emperor, true dragon bloodline, the inheritance of the Heavenly Dragon Great Emperor, a rare prodigy of an era. Did he possess 4 connate providences? Hanju cursed silently. This was ridiculous. A perfected Grand Unity Heaven Immortal who could even kill enemies at a higher realm. This was another protagonist candidate. Feeling a sense of danger, Hanju continued to cultivate the Destiny Sword Chi Great Wheel. After mastering this mystical power, Hanju began to upgrade his other Sword Dao mystical powers. He couldn't increase his cultivation level in the short term. He had to increase his strength first. He came to the Sword Dao River again and bumped into Zhang Guxing. Before Hanju could greet him, Zhang Guxing spoke first. The demon saint who caused trouble in the heavenly court has been captured. He's about to suffer heavenly punishment. Soon, the heavenly court will regain peace. At that time, they will continue to clean up the devil race. Hanju nodded and said, I already know. That demon saint was captured? Isn't he backed by a force? Zhang Guxing said calmly, he's only a pawn in the game between the Buddhist sect and the heavenly court. The heavenly court has given the entire western region of the immortal world to the Buddhist sect. The heavenly court needs to maintain its reputation. Thus, that demon saint must die. The more Hanju listened, the more it sounded like the Monkey King's story. Although Journey to the West wasn't as dark as it seemed, after the various conspiracy theories of modern-day netizens, the entire event became a Buddhist conspiracy. Is that demon saint a monkey? Hanju asked. Zhang Guxing replied, how would I know? After all, I've always been here. If not for you, I wouldn't have bothered to ask. Hanju immediately understood and smiled. My good brother, thank you for doing this. Zhang Guxing harumphed. What brother? You're not calling me senior now? We're already so close. How distant must I be to call you senior? Alright, have you really thought about it? Although there's a previous example like the Divine General, the Heavenly Emperor is cunning, temperamental, and has high standards. Perhaps you won't be able to catch his eye. If it doesn't work, I can only give up. Even if I can't win, I can still escape. I felt that something was wrong with you. You don't seem to be cultivating the Grand Unity Dao fruit. Your Dao is more like the 6 paths of the netherworld. I'm not sure either. I'm not the reincarnation of a mighty figure. If there's an opportunity, I'll grab it. That's true. Then, Hanju asked about the Supreme Buddha. Zhang Guxing indeed had some understanding of him. Among the 5 great Buddhas, the Supreme Buddha was the least utilitarian. However, he was deeply influenced by the one who established the 6 paths of reincarnation. He felt that the cycle of life and death was the greatest Tao and that it was the true heavenly Tao. He even repeatedly persuaded the Buddhist disciples to give up cultivating, angering the other 4 Buddhas. One of the Buddhas said that since he believes in the cycle of life and death, he should enter the cycle of reincarnation himself. Thereafter, the Supreme Buddha really entered the cycle of reincarnation, and there's been no news of him since. Zhang Guxing sighed while saying that. Hanju finally confirmed that this was not a Buddhist conspiracy. There was really something wrong with the Supreme Buddha. Zhang Guxing suddenly laughed mockingly. Since you're so concerned about the Supreme Buddha, have you already come into contact with him? He has already reincarnated more than 1,000 times, and the Buddhist sect has no intention of bringing him back. You don't have to worry. The Buddhist sect can't wait for the Supreme Buddha to fall into eternal reincarnation. Hanju smiled as he thought, brother, you're so calm. You can even predict this. He asked about Long Shan again, never heard of him. Hanju was helpless at this reply. But this made sense, there couldn't be only one son of the Heavenly Emperor. The two of them chatted for a while more before Hanju continued forward. The snow in the mortal world lasted for many years. The snow contained spirit chi, causing cultivators to benefit. However, for mortals, this was a great disaster. More and more mortals died in the snow disaster. The land and mountains were frozen, no longer green. Hanju inexplicably thought of the Ice Age. Could it be that Earth had also faced a great calamity before, so it welcomed the Ice Age? Was it Earth protecting itself? It was very likely, however, that was all in his previous life. Hanju's main goal now was to work hard to become stronger. The Heavenly Court would come at any time. Hanju started to worry. He waited every day, making it difficult to cultivate calmly. Su Chi had already returned. He was also called back by Hanju. He said that the Black Fox Demon Emperor had suffered from chi deviation during his cultivation, so he left very smoothly without any obstacles. Hanju couldn't help but want to laugh. A jinx was a jinx. After all, after Su Chi returned, Hanju discovered that the spirit chi had multiplied. He was pleasantly surprised and immediately entered seclusion. It had been 7 years since he had chatted with Zhang Guxing. Hanju couldn't help but feel frustrated. He stood up and walked out of the cave abode. Fairy Shishen, Changyuer, and Xing Hongxian cultivated in their cave abodes and did not go out again. Hanju found Fairy Shishen. She let him in when she heard his voice. It had been a long time since Hanju discussed the Tao with her. When he saw Fairy Shishen again, Hanju discovered that she was the same as before. She still had the aura of a fairy. What made you come out of seclusion to see me? Fairy Shishen asked with a smile. She looked at Hanju with a meaningful gaze. She wasn't stupid. She understood Hanju's intentions. In the entire Jade Pure Sacred Sect, how many people could enter the Cultivate diligently become Immortal Mountain to cultivate? Hanju smiled and asked, have you heard that the Heavenly Court is coming? This was no secret on the Cultivate diligently become Immortal Mountain. Xing Hongxian already knew, so with her relationship with Changyuer, she must have told her. Since Changyuer was also Fairy Shishen's disciple, she must have known already. Fairy Shishen said, I already know. Actually, you don't have to stay for the sake of the Jade Pure Sacred Sect and the people of the world. You can already ascend. You should leave as soon as possible. There's no need to fight with the immortals. As for us and the sect, this is all fate. There's no need to put yourself in danger. I've known you for 1,000 years. I know your personality very well. You only wanted to cultivate peacefully from the beginning. You want to live forever. There's no need to be tied down by emotions. I've lived for so long. To be honest, I've already lived enough. Even if I have to die tomorrow, I'm not unresigned. The only thing I feel guilty about is your kindness. I'm afraid I can't repay you for what you've done. She rarely spoke so much at once. Hanju smiled and said, don't worry. I definitely have a foolproof plan. If I can't win, I'll bring the Cultivate diligently become Immortal Mountain and ascend together. However, are you willing to follow me? Fairy Shishin shook her head and laughed. If I say no, it means that I don't know how to appreciate your offer. That would be hypocritical. Then, she changed the topic and started to talk about the past with him. Hanju's anxious heart also calmed down. After chatting with Fairy Shishin for a few days, he went to Changyuer and also chatted for a few days. His state of mind had completely recovered. Tea was useful to recall the past. He could remember his initial feelings again. After returning to the connate cave abode, Hanju was about to start to cultivate when a line of words suddenly appeared in front of him. Detected that the heavenly rules of the mortal world have been shut off. The calamity of the world is about to arrive. Chapter 182 Immortals Everywhere, Cleansing the Mortal World. The heavenly rules were shut off. The calamity of the world was coming. Hanju took a deep breath. It was finally coming. It was unknown how many soldiers and generals the heavenly court would send. Long Shan would definitely come. and so would the giant spiritual marshal God. Be cautious. Hanju took out the Book of Misfortune and started cursing them. He didn't care about winning unfairly. The other party was bullying them with numbers. After all, Heavenly Court, Numinous Palace. The Heavenly Emperor sat on his throne with a majestic aura. Divine light flashed behind him. The immortals in the hall were all wise and powerful, dressed in silver armor. Long Shan stood among the heavenly generals expressionlessly as he waited for the Heavenly Emperor's arrangements. The demon saint has already been executed. His soul has fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. Next, we should eliminate the remaining devils in the mortal world. How many mortal worlds have been tainted? The Heavenly Emperor slowly asked. A white-robed elder with white hair and a youthful face cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, the devil race has invaded 43 mortal worlds. 11 of them are worth cleansing." So many? The Heavenly Emperor frowned as displeasure flashed through his eyes. The immortals couldn't help but whisper. The white-robed elder smiled bitterly. "The demon saint delayed us for too long. This gave the devils an opportunity. The calamity lasted for nearly 1,000 years. It was indeed a long time," the Heavenly Emperor said. "I won't ask further. You can deal with it yourself. However, there's a mortal world that I want you to see with your own eyes." He waved his right hand. A divine light flew out from his sleeve and floated in the air in the hall. It transformed into a huge mirror, and the scene of Cultivate diligently become a mortal mountain appeared in it. Snow covered the sky. Amidst the flying snow, the Cultivate diligently become a mortal mountain seemed to be protected by an invisible barrier of light, isolating it from the snow. It had an ethereal feeling of loneliness at the top. The Heavenly Emperor said, "Several hundred years ago, you heard the arrogant words of those two mortals. I discovered that the providence of this world far exceeds that of other mortal worlds. Other than some reincarnations of mighty figures, the providence bearers are mainly from this mountain. This time, while cleaning up the mortal world, we have to pay attention to this world. Shaner must also participate." The immortals couldn't help but look at Long Shan. And oh wonder, this kid appeared in the hall. A burly heavenly general said, "I'm willing to lead my subordinates to clean up this world." He was 10 feet tall, with a big waist and a square face. He had tiger eyes and thick eyebrows, and he emitted an extremely domineering aura. The immortals were in an uproar. They didn't expect that the giant spiritual martial god would personally clean up the mortal world. Coupled with Long Shan, this situation had already surpassed the severity of merely cleansing a mortal world. Were the geniuses of this world really that powerful? When the time comes, all the immortals and gods must watch the battle in this hall. The Heavenly Emperor continued. These words caused the immortals to look in the same direction. Divine General. The Divine General had a majestic figure and a handsome and cold face. His armor burned with flames, and the pair of phoenix wings on his crown kept flapping. He could be said to be handsome and extraordinarily domineering. Back then, when the Divine General challenged the immortals in the mortal world, the Heavenly Emperor had also let the immortals and gods watch. After witnessing the Divine General's grace and talent, no one dared to oppose him entering the Heavenly Court. After that, under the Heavenly Court's nurturing, the Divine General rapidly rose to become the sharpest spear in the court. The Divine General remained silent. The immortals couldn't help but look forward to the exciting battle in the mortal world. There won't be another Divine General, Long Shan suddenly said, attracting everyone's attention. He looked at the Divine General with a burning gaze and said, "There's only one Divine General from the mortal world, and there won't be a second. But in the Heavenly Court, there won't be just one." His words were overbearing, but the Divine General wasn't angry. Instead, he lowered his head and smiled. The immortals smiled as well. Long Shan was an admirer of the Divine General and had cultivated with him for a period of time. 8 years later, Hanju was 1,100 years old, but there was no reward option. Seemed that after 1,000 years, there would no longer be a once-in-100 years reward. This disappointed Hanju. The snowstorm in the mortal world had finally receded in the past few years. The sun shone brightly and spring filled the air. The mortals cheered, but the cultivation world was in misery. The heavenly immortal manor had already spread the news that the heavenly court was about to clean up the mortal world. The entire world was fearful, the fiendish cultivators were also frightened. Although they did as they pleased, they didn't want the commoners to be slaughtered by the immortals. For a time, the righteous and demonic paths began to capture the remaining devils. Many families like the Mo's were slaughtered. As for the Mo family, they had long hidden away from the mortal world and were not affected. This day. A loud bell sound shook the world. Everyone in the world could hear it. Immediately after, a dignified voice sounded, "This world has been assimilated by the devil race. It will bring calamity to all worlds. According to the heavenly rules, it should be destroyed. Heavenly troops, listen up. Clean up the mortal world." Boom! The entire world exploded. Giant spiritual martial god's voice was too sudden, catching everyone off guard. Endless thunderclouds covered the sky. Everyone raised their heads. Above the layers of thunderclouds, terrifying figures appeared. They were high up and mighty like mountains. Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain. Hanju and Tao Comprehension Sword walked out of the cave abode and also saw the immortal gods in the sky. Immortal gods filled the sky, their divine might oppressing the world. Although the number wasn't terrifying, each figure was huge. They looked down on the mortal world, bringing despair and fear to everyone. Heavenly might descended, enveloping the world. Those are immortal gods? The three-headed Wyrm king exclaimed. The others looked up nervously. Su Chi, Fairy Shishen, Xing Hongxian, and Changyuer rushed over. They also looked up, their faces filled with shock. They were all mortals. This was the first time they had seen an immortal or god. Facing the divine shadows above the thunderclouds, they felt like ants, incomparably tiny. The Jade Pure Sacred Sect was also in chaos. Countless disciples were discussing while the elders activated the sect protection formation. However, they all knew that their formation was useless against immortals. Under the Fusong tree, the Black Hell Chicken, the Chaotic Heavenly Dog, the two Golden Crows, Yang Tiandong, Sun Chang'an, Su Chi, Tu Linger, the three-headed Wyrm king, Feng Liang, Morong Chi, Chu Shuren, and the others all looked at Hanju. Facing such a terrifying immortal army, Hanju still wanted to fight. How could they fight? Although Hanju had displayed great strength previously, compared to the immortals in the sky, his aura was worlds apart. The shortest divine figure on the thunderclouds was at least 10,000 feet tall. The Black Hell Chicken said with a trembling voice, "Master, shall we run?" How could they fight? There was no chance at all. Hanju ignored it and looked up at the sky with narrowed eyes. He saw someone. Ati was the most majestic and terrifying figure at the top. Giant spiritual martial god. The martial god stood above the 9 heavens and looked down at the world. His expression was cold as if he was looking at a worm on the ground. Hanju could feel that giant spiritual martial god was staring at him. Mortals who want to prove their talent to the heavenly court, come. In 2 hours, if no one can prove their talent, the heavenly punishment will descend and cleanse the world. Giant spiritual martial god's voice was extremely loud and shocking. He spoke very calmly, but it sounded like he was roaring. Chapter 183. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. Giant spiritual martial god's words caused the entire world to go mad. The immortal gods wanted to destroy the world. In this desperate situation, no one dared to challenge them. They were still in denial. What if the immortal gods were joking? Hanju was hesitating. Should he take the initiative to attack, or should he wait for the immortals to come to the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain? How can we cultivators fear death? An ancient voice sounded. To be precise, it resounded throughout the 10 provinces and 9 dynasties. Hanju had never heard this voice before, but he could feel an aura rising in the distance. Mahayana Realm cultivator, he wasn't the only one. Other Mahayana Realm cultivators flew into the sky. The Mahayana cultivators hidden everywhere in the world moved out. The world was facing the greatest calamity. They had no choice but to take action. Ji Xianqian also attacked. Carrying countless lightning bolts, Ji Xianqian charged into the clouds without hesitation. Behind him were the mighty figures of the heavenly immortal manor. So what if they're immortal gods? Humanity can triumph over heaven. Ji Xianqian laughed in high spirits. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. In the distance, waves of black demonic mist surged towards the immortals. Within the demonic mist was the Black Fox Demon Emperor. This was a crisis for all living beings in the world. Even though it was not human, the Black Fox Demon Emperor still had to take action. This was also the reason why Silencio did not kill him. Although the Black Fox Demon Emperor united the demons, he had also promised that if the immortal gods attacked the mortal world, he would definitely attack. Dozens of mighty figures from the mortal realm charged into the sky. Above the layers of thunderclouds, the divine shadows raised their divine weapons and slashed towards the mortal world. Devastation was at hand. A dazzling light filled the world, causing Hanju to squint. No, these people couldn't stop the immortals. He had to take action. Hanju left after saying, "Don't leave this mountain." When the strong light dissipated, everyone looked over with wide eyes. A 10,000-foot-tall giant appeared in the air. It was Hanju. Mystical power, imitate heaven and earth. Hanju rose in the sky, as if stepping on an invisible staircase. His golden robe fluttered wantonly. He raised his hand and used his dermic powers to block the vast dermic powers from the heavenly troops, preventing the great Yen from being destroyed. In an instant, the immortals turned around and looked at him. It's him? What powerful dermic powers! There's actually someone with such a cultivation level in the mortal world? Could it be that he has a heavenly Dao stone on him? It said that Yang Sand was killed by him. The immortals' voices were very loud, echoing throughout the mortal world. Everyone in the world was stunned. Did this mean that there was a mighty figure in the mortal world who was comparable to an immortal god? On the other side of the sky. Silencio stabilized himself in the air. His face was pale. He couldn't withstand the attacks of the heavenly soldiers. However, he couldn't help but smile when he heard the heavenly troops. No matter what, Daoist Chao would be the one to defend them. A cold snort sounded. It was the voice of giant spiritual martial god, standing at the top. Giant spiritual martial god suddenly leaned over. All the living beings were shocked and felt as if the sky was collapsing. He was too huge and majestic. Hanju saw his face clearly. Even though he was already 10,000 feet tall, he still looked tiny in front of the ladder. Grand Unity Heaven Immortal? No wonder you dare to be so arrogant. Giant spiritual martial god snorted, his tone filled with killing intent. Numinous Palace. The immortals in the hall were shocked. Grand Unity Heaven Immortal? Why would such a monster appear in the mortal world? Could it be that someone from the immortal world has descended into the mortal world? I'm not sure, but no matter what, he's indeed a good recruitment target for the heavenly court. After all, he appeared in the mortal world we control. How old is he? I can't deduce it. He should have a supreme treasure on him that can block karma deductions. The heavenly emperor was expressionless. He ignored the discussions of the immortals and gods and stared at Hanju in the mirror. Hanju wasn't afraid of the high and mighty giant spiritual martial god. His expression was calm. He raised his right hand and pointed his index finger at the sky. Everyone in the Great Yin could see his huge body. The scene of Hanju facing the immortals and pointing at the sky shocked them. The next scene was something they would never forget. Boom! Heaven Earth Mystic Yellow World Piercing Sword Finger. Sword chi shot out from Hanju's right index finger. The sword light shone brightly. The heavenly soldiers didn't have time to react. Giant spiritual martial god subconsciously raised his palm to block as a terrifying sword chi exploded, scattering the thunderclouds in the sky. Kill! With a furious roar from giant spiritual martial god, countless heavenly soldiers swooped down from the sea of clouds like a rain of arrows. A sword appeared in Hanju's hand. It was the primordial judgment sword. He held his sword in one hand and continued to step into the sky, quickly brandishing his sword. Sword chi surged with unstoppable momentum. Heavenly soldiers were killed by Hanju one after another. The heavenly soldiers' strength was at the loose immortal realm. How could they resist the reincarnation heaven immortal Hanju? Hanju didn't hold back either. If he spared their lives, wouldn't the heavenly court think that he was afraid? On the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain, Sun Chang'an, Yang Tiandong, and the others saw Hanju's fighting style and trembled with excitement. Grandmaster is so strong. Murong Chi said excitedly. So Grandmaster was really confident. The eyes of the others were filled with shock and admiration. Fairy Shixian looked at Hanju's back and sighed. Back then, Hanju had acknowledged her as his master. She had never thought that this child would be strong enough to fight against immortals. Hanju pressed forward and easily killed the heavenly soldiers along the way. However, his gaze was fixed on giant spiritual martial god, a perfected grand unity heaven immortal. It had to be said, giant spiritual martial god's aura was indeed terrifying. Even though Hanju had already reached the mid-stage of the reincarnation heaven immortal realm, he still felt the pressure. It was very difficult to insta-kill giant spiritual martial god. However, Hanju was still confident, was invincible at the same cultivation level. A beam of light descended from the sky like a meteorite and collided with him. He was giant spiritual martial god. Giant spiritual martial god also used the mystical power, imitate heaven and earth. Being 10,000 feet tall, he fought with Hanju in the sky. The two heaven immortals used their mystical powers, causing the sky to tear apart. Space twisted as countless bolts of lightning interwove between heaven and earth. The mortal world couldn't withstand it. Calamities occurred everywhere in the world. Be it mortals or beasts, most of them were fleeing in misery. Hanju couldn't care less about the situation in the mortal world. He focused on the battle seriously, although he had been cultivating in seclusion. With the simulation trial around, his combat experience was still very rich. The firmament sword chi landed on giant spiritual martial god's body one after another, but it didn't cause any substantial damage. This fellow's armor was extraordinary, of course. It was even harder for giant spiritual martial god to hurt him. Hanju kept moving, preventing his saber from striking. Hanju suddenly waved his sword. The sword chi was vast and mighty, turning into an endless sea of sword chi. Countless sword shadows condensed and appeared densely, like the stars in the universe. 3 pure world cleansing, giant spiritual martial god was moved. What kind of mystical power was this? In an instant, countless sword shadows attacked him from all directions. It was grand and spectacular. Stirred, the wind blew in all directions, shaking the forest on the ground and even uprooting it. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. Chapter 184 1100 Years Old Heaven Immortal. When Hanju used 3 pure world cleansing, the powerful giant spiritual martial god quickly fell into a disadvantage. Even though his dermic powers were endless and his armor was powerful, it couldn't block the endless sword shadows. He kept swinging his saber with gritted teeth. Hanju stood in the sky and waved his sword continuously. Sword shadows formed in the sea of sword chi and shot at giant spiritual martial god. The other heavenly soldiers were so frightened that they didn't dare to approach them. They could only watch from afar. How is that possible? Giant god can't defeat him? Giant spiritual martial god is a perfected grand unity heaven immortal. He can't be immortal. He must be from the immortal world. Oh no, are we going to be cannon fodder again? No wonder we have to clean up this mortal world. There's actually such an expert hidden here. The heavenly troops were terrified. In the heavenly court, they had the lowest status, but they cherished their lives and did not want to die. Most immortals became heavenly soldiers not for feelings but for benefits. Hanju raised his left hand and shot out the heaven-earth mystic yellow world-piercing sword finger from time to time, piercing through giant spiritual martial god's armor. Giant spiritual martial god was furious. All the immortals and gods in the numinous palace were watching. He didn't want to lose. He suddenly transformed into a bolt of lightning and disappeared. Almost at the same time, Hanju swung his sword and turned around. Clang, the sword and saber collided. The sound was clear and ear-piercing, causing all the mortals in the world to temporarily lose their hearing. Hanju smiled disdainfully and said, "That's it?" Enraged, giant spiritual martial god's face distorted, and he lost his mind. He roared and used his domineering strength to send Hanju flying. However, before he could continue, 10 million sword shadows swept over again. The sword shadows transformed into a mighty torrent that crashed into giant spiritual martial god's chest. Giant spiritual martial god fell to the ground as blood flowed from his mouth. This was the blood of an immortal god. It splattered in the sea of clouds and dissipated. Damn it. Giant spiritual martial god gritted his teeth and tried his best to stop. However, a continuous stream of sword shadows caused him to fall faster and faster. A massive body descended from the sky. How terrifying and spectacular! Like a giant mountain, it stirred up a world-destroying wind. The mountains and rivers below were crushed and flattened, the ground cracked and countless cracks appeared. Dust flew as cities were destroyed by the strong wind. It was unknown how many mortals, livestock, and beasts were swept into the horizon. Giant spiritual martial god landed on the ground, causing the ground within 1,000 miles to collapse. In front of immortals, everything in the mortal world seemed extremely weak. Countless sword shadows descended from the sky and landed on giant spiritual martial god's body. Boom! Giant spiritual martial god's armor shattered. His body endured the destruction of the 3 pure world cleansing, and he couldn't help but roar like a primordial beast, causing the world to shake and weep. Hanju looked down at him and hesitated. Should he kill him? Giant spiritual martial god wasn't a heavenly soldier. Continue pressing down. I'll destroy his body first. A hint of ruthlessness flashed across his eyes as giant spiritual martial god roared. His body was quickly destroyed by the 3 pure world cleansing. Only his soul was left. He was still enduring the pressure and could not move. Hanju looked up at the sky and said, "Does the heavenly court really want to clean up the mortal world?" His voice resounded throughout the world, echoing in the numinous palace. The heavenly emperor was expressionless. The immortals whispered among themselves, giant spiritual martial god might not be a first-rate general, but he was also a cornerstone. Most of the battles were led by him. A heavenly general that was robust like an iron pagoda stood out and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, this kid is too arrogant. I think we should use the heavenly punishment to directly destroy this world." The other literature immortals agreed, but some did not agree. The divine general said casually, "His Majesty has already said that if he can show his talent, he can give up on clearing the world. He's only 1,000 years old, but he has already reached the heaven immortal realm. Are any of you this talented?" With that said, all the immortals quietened down. Who would dare to not give face to the divine general? The burly heavenly general snorted coldly and did not continue trying to persuade them. The heavenly emperor ignored the immortal gods and continued to stare at the mirror. Seeing Hanju forcefully suppressing an immortal god, the cultivators of the Jade Pure Sacred Sect cheered. Taoist 9 Cauldrons also revealed a fanatical expression. He knew that Hanju was strong, but he didn't expect him to be so powerful that even an immortal god wasn't his match. He was glad that he listened to Li Qingzi and didn't defend Hanju. Under the Fusong tree, Su Qi looked at the magnificent scene in the sky. For some reason, he felt that this scene was very familiar. It was like he had seen it before in a dream. Morong Qi and Tu Linger felt their blood boiling. They wished they could immediately participate in the battle. The others were also very excited and found it difficult to maintain their calm humph. "Do you really think that our heavenly court has no one left?" A cold snort sounded like thunder. Hanju turned around and saw a vast silver light descending from the sky, illuminating the world. In the dazzling light, a figure walked towards Hanju. V. Longshan. Longshan's silver armor burst out with divine light. He held a trident and his cloak fluttered wantonly, emitting an unparalleled aura. He's stronger than giant spiritual martial god. This was Hanju's first thought. He looked at Longshan. The 3 pure world cleansing that had suppressed giant spiritual martial god also dissipated. Hanju returned to his original size. Maintaining imitate heaven and earth would continue to consume his dermic powers. He planned to deal with Longshan with all his might. This was the son of the heavenly emperor, with the bloodline of a true dragon, the inheritance of the heavenly dragon great emperor, the prodigy of an era. He couldn't be careless. Longshan looked at him with a burning gaze and asked, "How old are you?" Hanju said calmly, "I just reached 1,100. Hearing this, Longshan frowned and walked faster towards him. The numinous palace was in an uproar. A 1,100 years old heavenly immortal. Impossible. This was even more exaggerated than Longshan. The son of the heavenly emperor, Qi Yunxian, immediately stood out from the immortals and cupped his fists. "Your Majesty, we have to take in this child. Otherwise, it will be a huge loss for the heavenly court." He was extremely excited. He didn't expect Hanju to really be able to block the heavenly troops and suppress giant spiritual martial god who was stronger than him. Qi Yunxian was proud. This was the mortal world under his jurisdiction. The other heavenly generals agreed. Such a prodigy is indeed rare. If we nurture him, he will definitely become the next divine general. That's right. Your Majesty, please reconsider. If the heavenly court has 2 divine generals, how can we be bullied by the Buddhists? Hearing the immortal god's words, the heavenly emperor's expression did not change. Let's wait and see. Between him and Shaner, who do you think will win? The immortals fell silent. That was hard to guess. Long Shan's talent was terrifying, and his combat strength was immeasurable. However, Hanju also had an easy time against giant spiritual martial god. They didn't dare to guess, and no matter who they guessed would win, they would offend someone. From the heavenly emperor's attitude, Hanju was very likely to become one of them. A white-haired old immortal said slowly. His Highness Long Shan obtained the great emperor's inheritance. His advantage was never his cultivation speed, but his battle strength. With someone taking the lead, the other immortals also supported Long Shan and flattered the heavenly emperor. Chapter 185 definitely cannot lose. Hanju didn't know the situation in the numinous palace. He only had one goal now, defeat Long Shan. Long Shan was clearly stronger than giant spiritual martial god, but Hanju didn't feel any danger. No matter how strong he was still a grand unity heaven immortal. The 2 of them walked closer and closer, their auras increasing in intensity, the surrounding sky distorted. Please fight me with the determination to kill, because I won't show mercy. Long Shan stared at him and said coldly. Hanju cursed silently. You have the heavenly court behind you and the heavenly emperor as a father. Of course you're fearless, but me. Hanju developed 3 stars of hatred points towards Long Shan. Almost at the same time, Hanju and Long Shan rushed towards each other. Boom! A strong light burst forth, illuminating the sky. Hanju quickly brandished the primordial judgment sword and fought with Long Shan. Long Shan waved his trident and easily blocked his every strike. The 2 of them were just testing each other for now. However, the probing only lasted for a few breaths of time. Long Shan's attack power suddenly increased, and his trident sent Hanju flying. He followed with his trident and stabbed forward, waving it like a dragon, and his dermic powers transformed into a 5-clawed golden dragon. Like a mountain range, it roared into the sky and charged towards Hanju with unstoppable force. Thunderclouds surged violently as the atmosphere in the sky changed rapidly, as if heaven was changing its expression. After Hanju figured out the strength of Long Shan's dermic powers, he immediately used 3 pure world cleansing. This mystical power had a wide range and terrifying lethality. It had always been Hanju's ultimate technique. Once the Sea of Sword Chi appeared, countless sword shadows quickly condensed and attacked Long Shan. Long Shan didn't panic at all. He had witnessed the battle between Hanju and giant spiritual martial god. He waved his trident, causing his dermic powers to transform into 9 golden dragons that quickly circled his body, destroying all the sword shadows attacking from all directions. As Long Shan defended, he rushed towards him with a wild smile. Hanju was indeed very strong, but not strong enough. Hanju used the heaven-earth mystic yellow world-piercing sword finger, but Long Shan dodged it. Seeing that he was about to reach him, Hanju drew a circle with his sword, and sword chi leaked out. A huge sword chi will condensed in front of him and spun at high speed. The sword chi circled at high speed in the huge wheel, raising a terrifying hurricane. Destiny sword chi great wheel, karma mystical power. Long Shan could sense the danger, and his expression changed slightly. He immediately moved behind Hanju. Hanju turned around and waved his sword. Countless sword shadows slashed out with huge momentum and collided with Long Shan. Long Shan relied on the 9 golden dragons around him to block the sword shadow torrent, but he was still pushed back. What a powerful sword chi! Is his magic power endless? Long Shan frowned. He felt that Hanju was difficult to deal with. The Destiny sword chi great will made him feel extreme danger. He couldn't approach it, but if he maintained a distance, he could only passively endure the 3 pure world cleansings barrage. Hanju's eyes narrowed. He felt that he couldn't delay any longer. The faster he defeated Long Shan, the more he could prove his talent. His shoulders shook, and 2 heads and 4 arms grew out. Mystical power, 3 heads 6 arms. The Qilin sword appeared, and he waved it at Long Shan with 2 hands. Sword Qi and Sword Shadows kept attacking. The remaining 4 hands stretched out their index fingers and pointed at Long Shan, Heaven Earth Mystic Yellow World Piercing Sword Finger. Hanju's attacks increased exponentially. The number of Sword Shadows and Sword Qi far exceeded expectations. Under such a violent attack, Long Shan's 9 golden dragons were destroyed one after another. Oh no! Long Shan's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly dodged. Whoosh! There was an uproar in the numinous palace. Seeing Hanju forcefully suppressing Long Shan, they all looked as if they had seen a ghost. 3 heads 6 arms. The Dao sect's mystical power. Is he from the Dao sect? No, he doesn't have any Dao sect karma on him. Perhaps it's just a fortuitous encounter. Incredible. His physique doesn't seem simple. He can actually squander his dermic powers like this. His Highness is about to lose? The immortals were shocked. The Heavenly Emperor watched quietly with a calm expression, and the mortal world, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals watched from afar. They were dumbfounded. Giant spiritual martial god's body was destroyed. Even the son of the Heavenly Emperor couldn't defeat Hanju. Are mortals so fierce nowadays? At this moment, Hanju used 3 heads 6 arms, Heaven Earth Mystic Yellow World Piercing Sword Finger, 3 Pure World Cleansing, and Firmament Sword Qi. He forcefully suppressed Long Shan as if there were 3 of him fighting at once. Long Shan didn't dare to approach, afraid that he would be injured by the Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel. He could only constantly dodge. However, the immortals were watching from the upper world. No matter how he dodged, he didn't dare to escape. This was a battle that would affect his reputation, he had already boasted. Long Shan gritted his teeth as his eyes filled with ruthlessness. His silver armor burst out with divine light and turned into a silver rainbow. It broke through countless sword shadows and sword qi to attack Hanju with unstoppable might. Hanju's eyes narrowed and raised his palm. 6 Paths Ultimate Seal. The 6 Paths dermic powers condensed into a huge black seal that looked like a text character. It collided with Long Shan and blocked him. Hanju followed and moved behind him. The Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel was facing Long Shan. The terrifying suction force tried to pull him in without resistance. Oh no! Long Shan's expression changed drastically. He tried his best to escape, but the suction force was too terrifying. The surrounding space distorted violently. The golden dragons around him roared as if they were forced into a corner. Long Shan did not panic as he quickly formed hand seals with both hands. In an instant, his dermic powers condensed into a silver shadow above his head. The silver figure had a domineering figure. Although his face couldn't be seen, he exuded an invincible aura. Great Emperor, kill the enemy! Long Shan shouted angrily. The silver figure above him raised his right hand and slapped at the Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel. Boom! The Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel was dispersed. Hanju frowned. Almost at the same time, his arms didn't stop. He continued to cast spells and attack Long Shan. He even opened his mouth and spat out sword qi. Caught off guard, Long Shan was pressed to the ground by the countless sword qi. Thousands of sword shadows poured down like the collapse of the sky and landed on him. Long Shan ended up in the same state as giant spiritual martial god. Crap, Long Shan finally panicked. Hanju's mystical powers were unleashed too quickly. He couldn't keep up. The silver shadow on his body finally dissipated after suffering the attacks of 10 million sword shadows and sword qi. This time, Long Shan could only use his body to withstand it. Boom! Long Shan fell and smashed through the ground. The ground split open, and countless sword shadows and sword qi descended from the sky. At first glance, it looked like a black pillar that connected the sky and the ground. Hanju was expressionless. He kept using his mystical powers. His 6 arms moved together and his 3 heads had cold expressions. He was like a primordial war god. violent and domineering below, Long Shan was enduring Han Ju's sword chi and sword shadows. He was like a sandbag that couldn't dodge. If this continues, I'll definitely lose, Long Shan thought angrily. He had been utterly defeated in his first battle after leaving seclusion. He didn't even hurt Han Ju. What would the immortals and his father think of him? Thinking of this, Long Shan's eyes turned red. He couldn't lose, he couldn't afford to lose.